beautiful section of interaction. I'm CM Meera, research scholar at the Research and Postgraduate Department of English, St. Aloysius College, Trishul. And we are here with yet another session of Chrysalis, Chrysalis II, a commemorative lecture series in fond remembrance of our beloved teachers, Dr. Dhanya Menon, Reverend Father Anthony Kutigat, and Professor M.G. Paul Davis. On behalf of the entire Department of English and St. Aloysius College, Trishul, we welcome all present here for the second lecture in the series of Chrysalis 2. The topic for today's discussion is Transcending Taboo, Dynamics of Resistance in Manju Kapoor's Female Characters. And the lecture will be delivered by Jeetha Johny Chungath, Assistant Professor, Prajodi Niketan College, Pudukad, and also part-time research scholar at the Research and Postgraduate Department of English, St. Aloysius College, Trishul. The chair for today's session is Dr. Suma MV, Associate Professor at the Department of English, Government College, Koranjeli. Dr. Suma MV was awarded her PhD in 2014, and she has 26 years of experience in teaching with a considerable number of presentations and publications, both at the national and international levels. The major area of her interest is women's studies. So on behalf of the entire department, I welcome Dr. Suma MV to today's session. Welcome you, ma'am. Suma, ma'am, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So a warm good evening to all of you here, and the head of the department, Ms. Betsy, ma'am, and hello.
Hello. Yes, you're very audible.
Issues, I'm
no,
trying
you're
my
very
best.
audible for us.
Okay, fine. Meera, this is Jeetha, Johny, and all the faculty members and students, research scholars of St. Aloysius College who have gathered here with great enthusiasm to proceed with Chrysalis. I understand that this is your second lecture series, and I am also quite touched and inspired by the fact that this is being hosted in memory of a fellow teacher, Ms. Dhanya, and I believe I too was an acquaintance of hers. So, Ms. Jeetha Johny, regarding her, I have had the opportunity to associate with her as a board member of the University of Calicut, and together we have edited textbooks for the University of Calicut. So she is a good friend and companion of mine. So I'm also happy that I am here to chair a session, a paper of hers. I think without much ado, let us make a few statements about the paper, or just introduce the paper. And then we look forward to, as Ms. Betsy was saying yesterday, to a discussion, an interactive session where we can all share our thoughts and make it a very rewarding sort of session. So I understand that the paper is on Transcending Taboos, Dynamics of Resistance in Manju Kapoor's Female Characters. And it's based on a novel by Manju Kapoor, Difficult Daughters. Now, women's studies is an area certainly of great interest to me as well. As far as I know, Manju Kapoor's novel Difficult Daughters has women characters who definitely subvert the dominant patriarchal credo. And I think she critiques all ideologies of domination. I also feel that this particular writer, Manju Kapoor, unpins the attempts at homogenizing and categorizing of women, and she sort of de-romanticizes and liberates women from a history that has a very corrosive effect on the female psyche. I would also say that Manju Kapoor has undoubtedly interrogated the deforming pressures of socially constructed gender roles, affecting decolonizing of the female psyche. Mrs. Jeetha Johny has opted to study the dynamics of resistance to the taboos that prevail in the society. We all know that the society that we live uh, has delineated a whole lot of taboos. But these taboos are particularly disastrous for marginalized groups of people, which includes women. So rather than studying the traumatic effect of the taboos on the women, Jeetha has attempted to study the ways or the different ways in which they have resisted the taboos, which I think is a very heartening sort of a thing, and which will lead to very major avenues in women's studies. So I also note that some of the acts of resistance that come up from the women characters, I understand there are 3 generations of women there, and some of the acts of resistance include their preferences for masturbation, they indulge in adultery, there is abortion there is incestuous abuse coming up there. So why it is imperative that we understand why women seek such acts of resistance when they are they will certainly be indicted by the whole of society. In fact, masturbation actually defies the whole concept of sexuality that has been forced upon women. So why opt masturbation? In fact, this is of greater interest to me because in my study of 2 playwrights, there is a particular character in Churchil's play who, after her association with men, after having tried a whole lot of sexual alternatives of sexuality, she finds this as a better option, wherein there is no power hegemony coming in. Okay? So what I would like to say at the beginning is that this paper, which discusses taboos and the dynamics of resistance as far as the women characters in Manju Kapoor's novel is concerned, these taboos affect women all the more because they are on the verge of they are on the verge of a sort of extinction as far as society is concerned. I mean, it is a society that threatens the very existence of women by imposing all these taboos on them. So I think with these few words of introduction, I think the rest can be done as part of the interactive session that we are likely to have after the paper is presented by Jeetha. So let me invite Mrs. Jeetha Johny to present the paper, Transcending Taboo, Dynamics of Resistance in Manju Kapoor's Female Characters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Suma, for the nice words. Before moving on to my presentation, I would like to share my gratitude, my homage to some of my teachers, my colleagues, my former guide. So let me extend here my homage to my former guide, Dr. Danya Menon, who helped me with the initial period of my research work. And I should take this opportunity to thank my guide, Dr. Betsy Paul, who was the first one to offer me help when Dr. Danya was no more. She passed away. And when I did not think about continuing with my research, it was Dr. Betsy who called up me, and she was the one who offered help to continue with my research. So I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Betsy and Dr. Suma for for accepting my invitation to chair this session. So with this, I move on to my presentation. I'm sharing my screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so welcome to the second lecture series of Chrysalis II 2022-23. My topic for today's lecture is Transcending Taboo, Dynamics of Resistance in Manju Kapoor's Female Characters. So I have taken one work, Difficult Daughters, where she's talking about 3 generations of female characters, where we have Kasturi representing the first generation, and Virmadi representing the second generation, and the third generation represented by Virmadi's daughter, Ida. Now, as an introduction to taboo, taboo is defined as a social or religious custom prohibiting or restricting a particular practice or forbidding association with a particular person, place, or thing. Now, we know that when taboos are created, actually the purpose of taboo creation is to protect the individual or the community. But when all the members of the community are not given equal protection, they serve to suppress the right of some of them in the society. So when we look at the taboo creation, we can see that the taboos are created by the dominant class or the dominant center, and usually the suppressed ones will be the ones from the margins, because framing the taboos are done, or the responsible ones for framing the taboos are the dominant sections of the community. So they are trying to impose these taboos on the weaker sections of the community, and they will be oppressed or suppressed as a part of taboo creations. Now, when we look at the society, we can see that there are different types of taboos, like social taboos, cultural taboos, religious taboos, sexual taboos, and of course, we have food taboos also existing among many cultures. And when we think of when a member of the society thinks of breaking a taboo, it's often considered as objectionable by other members of the society, and it is punishable also in most of the societies. So taboos are sometimes referred to as doing the unthinkable, like we cannot think about doing something which is considered as a taboo by the society. Even thinking about violating a taboo becomes problematic. The sanctions associated pertain not just to the behavior that contradicts the taboo, but also merely thinking or considering such a behavior is also problematic because of the punishments, maybe. Now, when we look at Indian English literature, we can see that many of the writers have discussed about breaking the taboos or the issues considered as taboo in the society. And Manju Kapoor, one of the most celebrated Indian English literature novelist, has also dealt with gender relations in her novels. And she has extensively written about the issues considered as taboo, like she has dealt with female sexuality, sexual assault, sexual disability, divorce, abortion, adultery, extramarital relations, and incestuous abuse too. Now, the main focus of her works are on the resistance of the female characters within the territory of home, society, and culture. So, as I told you, today I'm going to discuss about 3 characters, Kasturi, Virmadi, and Ida. And when we look at these three characters, we can see that these three characters, especially Virmadi and Ida, they are resisting uh, the taboos created by the society within their own spaces. It can be the space of the home or the society or the taboos created by the culture. So, Manju Kapoor's female characters show resistance to the existing taboos and they break them. So, how they are trying to resist it? It is through transcending these taboos, especially created by the patriarchal society. So today I'm focusing on Manju Kapoor's first novel, Difficult Daughters, which is written in the background of India-Pakistan partition, and where she's talking about three generations of female characters, Kasturi, Virmadi, and Ida. So as I told you, Kasturi belongs to the first generation, and Virmadi is the daughter of Kasturi, who belongs to the second generation, and Ida is the daughter of Virmadi, who belongs to the third generation. So here I'm concentrating on the two female characters, Virmadi and Ida, who revolt and resist patriarchy. They break all the gender norms, the social constructs, and they transcend their self and identity. So I have tried to analyze these two characters in the background of Julia Kristeva's concept of abject and maternal abjection. So before starting with the analysis of these characters, let us see an overview of Julia Kristeva's theory of abjection. Julia Kristeva, the French philosopher, theorized the concept of abjection in her 1980 work, Powers of Horror, an essay on abjection. She describes abjection as a feeling an individual experiences when he or she is confronted by the sheer experience of one's typically repressed corporal reality. Kristeva developed the concept of the abject as that which is rejected by or disturbs social reason, the consensus that underpins a social order. So the object exists accordingly somewhere between the concept of an object and the concept of the subject, representing taboo elements of the self barely separated off in a liminal space. Kristeva claims that within the boundaries of what one defines as subject, a part of oneself and object, something that something something that exists independently of oneself, there resides pieces that were once categorized as a part of oneself or one's identity that has been rejected, that is the abject. Kristeva remarks that the abject goes beyond the body and rejects anything it sees unfit by societal standards. From Kristeva's psychoanalytic perspective, abjection is done to the part of ourselves that we exclude, that is the mother. We must abject the maternal, the object which has created us, in order to construct an identity. So here I'm trying to apply the theory of maternal abjection, how these two characters, they try to abject the maternal. In Powers of Horror, an essay on abjection, Kristeva identifies that we first experience abjection at the point of separation from the mother. She identifies that abjection represents a revolt against that which gave us our own existence or state of being. The abject is that aspect of the self which lies outside the symbolic order, evoking feelings of anxiety, disgust, repulsion, and fear. These feelings index the attempt by the individual to distance the self from what is felt to be improper or unclean in order to establish subjectivity and identity. Now, when we look at the novel Difficult Daughters, we can see that Ida, the daughter who represents the third generation, she tries to symbolically cast off the maternal, that is her mother, Virmadi, who in turn reject her mother, Kasturi. Now, the reason for this resistance or rejection is because of their relationship with their mothers. So Virmadi's relationship with her mother becomes the first casualty and reason for resistance. Manju Kapoor writes that when she's talking about their relation, she says that the language of feeling had never flowed between them, between Virmadi and her mother Kasturi. Virmadi felt raging. Why was saying anything to her mother so difficult? Because she found it very difficult to communicate to her mother Kasturi. And she thought that maybe it was better or it was best to keep silence, to be silent. Now, when you look at the story, you can see that Virmadi is the eldest of 11 children. So she has 10 siblings. And Virmadi spends most of her time as a nurse or mother for her siblings, while her mother Kasturi is spending most of her time reproducing. So after having a child, it is the responsibility of Virmadi to take care of the child. And Kasturi is always engaged in this process of reproduction. Virmadi experiences rejection from her mother as a 10-year-old. Now, you have Manju Kapoor is describing an incident where Virmadi is trying to show some signs of affection towards her mother, but Kasturi is getting irritated and she's pushing Virmadi away from her. So she writes, at times Virmadi yearned for affection, for some signs that she was special. However, when she put her head next to the youngest baby, feeding in the mother's arms, Kasturi would get irritated and push her away. So Virmadi feels that she is continuously under pressure to take care of her siblings, and she, in a way, is an extended self of her mother, Kasturi. So Virmadi's life continues to be under pressure of domestic duties and her mother's restrictions. So mother is continuously restricting her. She wants to go out of her house and she wants to continue her studies, but her mother is not allowing her for that. Her mother is asking her to get married and settle down. So for her mother, marriage is only the way with which a girl can get settled. So Virmadi wanted to study and she thought it was useless looking for answers inside the home because she was always under pressure of the domestic chores. She has to take care of the children. So she thought it's better to look outside because she felt that education, freedom, and the brighter lights of Lahore colleges is going to change her life. But Kasturi wants Virmadi to get married and settle down. And she says, at your age, I was already expecting you, not fighting with my mother. So Kasturi also feels that Virmadi is always fighting with her. Kasturi is not giving her the affection or love or sympathy which Virmadi expects from her mother. So the absence or lack of mother's love and sympathetic shoulders at home force Virmadi to resist or revolt against her mother. Virmadi revolts and becomes a difficult daughter to Kasturi, and she defies her mother. She further falls in love with a married man with 2 children. And when the story goes on, we see that Virmadi gets attracted to Harish, who's a college professor. He is well educated. And the reason behind this attraction may be because Harish is encouraging her to study and to get freedom. So, which she's not getting from her own mother or from her family. And the only member who supports her, she feels, is her father. Where she feels that her father is a liberal mind who welcomes her education. And she falls in love with this married man, Harish. And before marriage itself, they have a sexual relationship. And she knows that this man has got 2 children with another female named Ganga. But towards the end, Virmadi becomes Harish's second wife. So she's getting married to Harish. Now, when we look at the relationship between Virmadi and Kasturi, Virmadi always feels that Virmadi is the subject and Kasturi, her mother, becomes the object. And their relationship, the relationship between the subject and object, is always invoking feelings of anxiety, disgust, repulsion, and fear within Virmadi. So these feelings index an attempt by Virmadi to distance herself from her mother's self in order to establish her own subjectivity and identity. So as I told you, she feels that her father is more liberal because she feels that her father sees education as an escape from the rigorous family life. So her father is encouraging her to get education, even though Kasturi is not allowing her for that. But Kasturi cannot say no to Virmadi when her husband agrees to Virmadi's education, to continue her education. And when we look at her husband, Harish is also promoting Virmadi to study and to have a self. But at home, there are restrictions like Ganga and Virmadi are staying together. Harish's first wife with her 2 children and Virmadi, they are staying together. And Virmadi is trying to purify that objection, the disgust or the feeling of disgust towards her mother through her father, whom she feels is educated, and he acts as a symbol of patriarchy. Now, when the story continues, we can see that Ida, who's the narrator of the story, is the daughter of Virmadi, who's never told about the past life of her mother, that is Virmadi. Now, her relatives gives her only very limited view of her mother, but she knows that is not the real Virmadi, her mother. So she wants to know about her mother's past. And when the novel opens, she is trying to make a journey to know about her mother's past. Now, the relationship between Ida and Virmadi is also problematic here because Virmadi, even though she was a difficult daughter for her mother, Kasturi, when she becomes a mother, she is also continuing the same constraints or limitations on her daughter, Ida. So the agony and anger of Ida is captured by Manju Kapoor in the epilogue of the novel. She says, I grew up struggling to be a model daughter, pressure to perform day and night. My mother tightened her reins on me as I grew older. She said it was for my own good. As a result, I am constantly looking for escape routes. So, whatever Virmadi tried to do in order to escape from her problems or from her relation with her mother, Ida is doing the same thing. It's like a continuation of whatever Virmadi has done to escape from uh, the clutches of her mother, Kasuri. Now, Ida further complains that for long periods I was engulfed by melancholy, depression, and despair. I would lie in bed for hours, unable to sleep, pitying myself for all I didn't have, blaming my mother. So she gets married. In the course of the story, she gets married, but Ida gets divorced because she finds it very difficult to connect with her husband, and she gets divorced and she is back to her mother. So once she is back to her family, Virmadi is always blaming Ida. So she says, I find it very difficult because my mother is always blaming me. Now her shadow no longer threatens me. Like the story starts with the funeral pyre of Virmadi, and Ida says that the shadow of Virmadi no longer threatens her. Without the hindrance of her presence, I can sink into her past and make it mine. So here she is also trying to continue the same past of Virmadi, where she is also trying to fight for her identity, for her dignity, just like Virmadi did towards her mother. So Ida, being daughter of Virmadi, fights for her identity, dignity, and self-confidence, which Virmadi also lacked, because the generation or the background is also proves as a very important factor in the resistance of these female characters. So she rejects the family norms and the male dominated society. Ida is also doing the same thing which Virmadi did. Only thing is the intensity is different. So Ida wants to be different from her daughter. Ida wants to live by her own terms. And Ida protests towards her mother and becomes a typical daughter of a difficult daughter, Virmadi. And here, the title of the novel proves to be very significant, because Virmadi proves to be a very difficult daughter of Kasturi, and Ida proves to be a difficult daughter of yet another difficult daughter, Virmadi. Now, here, Ida becomes the subject. In her narration, Ida becomes the subject and she refuses to be like Virmadi. And the novel opens with the frank declaration of Ida, who's the narrator. She says, now she was gone, that is her mother, Virmadi. Now she was gone. Now she was gone, and I stared at the fire that rose from her shriveled body, dry eyed, laden, half dead myself, while my relatives clustered around the fire and wept. I stared again at my mother's ashes and wondered what memorial I could give her. So, all other family members, her relatives, they are crying over the death of Virmadi, but Ida is just staring at the funeral pyre, and she says, I looked at her body, my eyes were dried and I felt half dead inside, but she couldn't cry like the other members of the family. So Christopher says the object has only one quality of the object, and that is being opposed to I. And here, Ida declares that the one thing I had wanted was not to be like my mother. So it is with this declaration that Ida, the narrator, starts the novel, narration of the novel. So here we can see that she is trying to resist her mother and reject her mother, and she is trying to purify herself, and she tries to become free to lead her own life, because her mother is no more, so she thinks that she is no longer threatened by the shadow of her mother. So only with Virmadi's death is the ghost laid to rest. So she concludes by saying, this book weaves a connection between my mother and me, each word a brick in a mansion I made with my head and my heart. Now live in it, Mama, and leave me be. Do not haunt me anymore. So from the this is the last paragraph of the novel. The novel closes with this saying of Ida, and from this itself we know that even though she is trying to cast off the maternal, that is Virmadi, the memory or the maternal abject is haunting her. And Virmadi wanted to name her daughter Bharati, but Harish is not agreeing to this, because Harish says that she was born during the time of that division, the India-Pakistan division. So he says that whenever I see my daughter, I think of the violence or the religious division when India was divided into Pakistan and India. So he names his daughter Ida, and Ida, he feels that he says that Ida, the name implies a new state of consciousness and a new beginning. So here, Ida want to get rid of her mother, even the memories of her mother, because she has a fear, like Virmadi, that her mother is going to be an extension of herself. So she wants to cast off the maternal, but she cannot do it. The maternal memory or the maternal figure, be it Virmadi or be it Kasturi, these two mothers are haunting their daughters, Virmadi and Ida. So, to conclude, the female characters of Manju Kapoor, especially Virmadi and Ida, they experience maternal abjection as a social and lived process. Now, Virmadi's and Ida's relationship, especially the problematic relationship with their mothers, is the reason or the cause for resistance. And usually, the mother-daughter relationship will be smooth, and especially when they have the common experience of childbearing, this common experience will bring them together. But unlike the usual mother-daughter relationship, even the common experience of childbearing is not bringing them together. That is Kasturi and Virmadi. Now, the novel points out how a mother's influence could be unsettling to the daughter under certain circumstances, especially different circumstances, and how love and affection could be replaced by hate and bitterness, and how a mother, traditionally considered as an epitome of sacrifice and goodness, could become a symbol of selfishness and resentment to her children. Now, in a culture where female individualism and identity have remained as alien ideas, and marital bliss and woman's role at home are the central foci, it is interesting to see the resistance and emergence of new woman as an essential expression of transcending taboos. Now, here, these two characters, Virmadi and Ida, they are trying to break the sexual taboos connected with the society. They are trying to deconstruct the social construct of uh, sexuality. And throughout the novel, you can see that they are following adultery, or they have illicit relationship with a married man. And Ida is trying for an abortion because she, after her divorce, she is getting aborted. So Virmadi is against this idea, but she is resisting her mother. Ida is resisting her mother, and she moves on with her abortion. So, to conclude, externally, Virmadi and Ida, they are projected as new women. They are trying to subvert all the patriarchal convention, and they are transcending the social, cultural, and sexual taboos in society. And they are trying to resist and come out with their own subjectivity and new identity. But with regard to the maternal abjection, they cannot cast off the internalized maternal abject, because the memories of their mothers, it haunt them throughout their life. And it was easy for them uh, to break all the conventions of the society or to transcend the taboos in society, but they find it very difficult to cast off the maternal abject because they have internalized it. So, with this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an informative session. Now, I call upon Ms. Sridevi K.S., the respondent of today's session. Sridevi?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Am I
you are
audible?
audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Uh, yes, ma'am. Hello, Jeetha, ma'am. It was really a comprehensive presentation and very interesting too. The concept of abjection and how you related it to the resistant nature of Manchu Kapoor's female characters. It seems interesting. And one doubt I have is that how Vimadi can be related to abjection. Of course, you said she is the object while Ida is the subject, but whether Virmadi can be a representative of transcending the taboos and asserting her identity by subverting the social boundaries, or can she be a failure in that? Because in most of the times Aida says like she doesn't want her memory to be with her, and she doesn't like her mother. Why it is like that? If both of them are successful in asserting their identity by subverting the social taboos, how Virmadi becomes something like someone different from Ida?
Thank you, Sridevi, for the question. See, you have to see these three characters in their social background, um, in the generations to which they belong.
Okay.
So, Kasturi belonged to the maybe to the generation where we find women as completely dependent uh, on the male members of the family. Now, Virmadi is trying to be independent, but once she becomes a mother, there is a continuity of, as a mother, I'm talking about as a mother.
Yes.
As an individual, she's trying to resist her mother. But as a mother of Ida, she's following uh, some of the same methods followed by Kasturi. So that's why Ida, who's a member of the modern generation, gets irritated at her mother, Virmadi. Because Virmadi was a difficult daughter to Kasturi, and the same difficult daughter, when she became the mother, she becomes a difficult mother for Ida. So, Ida, who's a member of the modern generation, the last generation, she finds it very difficult because Virmadi also wanted Ida, but Virmadi is not restricting her from getting education, which Kasturi did to Virmadi. So the intensity of that restriction is different, and the resistance these characters show towards their mothers are also different. It may be because of the three generations that we are talking about in the novel, uh, in the background of their period in which they belong to or they live.
Okay, ma'am. It's clear.
Thank you, Sridevi. Thank you, Jeetha. The session is now open for discussion. So if you have any questions,
Arati has asked a question. Do you think the women characters in the novel, difficult daughters, especially the mothers, are responsible for their own subjugation, as in the sense they are furthering patriarchal and sexist notions? Yes, Arati, to an extent. As I told you, when Virmadi was a daughter, she was resisting or she was revolting against her mother, Kasturi. And Kasturi is, of course, a patriarchal voice. But Virmadi, when she was a daughter, she was not the patriarchal voice. She was trying to resist the patriarchal voice or the patriarchal notions. But when she became a mother, in a way, she is trying to subjugate her own daughter, Ida. But as I told you, the intensity of this subjugation, or there is a difference in their attitude. Like it's not the same attitude that Virmadi is showing towards Ida, which Kasturi showed towards Virmadi. But Ida, a member of the present generation, find it very difficult to connect to her mother, and she's trying to revolt. Even after her death, she says, I don't want to be like my mother. But this mother's self is haunting her. She's trying to cast off her mother's memory. But towards the end of the novel, we know that even though she is resisting her mother externally, she finds it difficult to internally cast away the memory or the maternal. Aditi, hope I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you have answered it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Jeetha, can I also put in a word here?
Yeah, sure, miss.
And I just wanted to note some certain clarifications, okay?
Okay.
Since both of us have been working on women's studies, I mean, see, you are talking about the abjection of the maternal,
Yeah.
to construct a liberated self.
Yes.
And there is this scene where the death of the mother, Virmadi, you have the funeral pyre, actually the daughter Ida rising from the fire of the funeral pyre, right?
Yes. Yes.
So there is a kind of a dissociation and abjection of the maternal self, which is, and you also talk about the subversion of the patriarchy here.
Yes.
If I say, could we just look at it like this? Rather than the patriarchal credo asserting itself here, is it the matriarchal lineage that is troubling the women characters?
Yeah, the lineage, yes, the matriarchal lineage becomes problematic for the female characters, but the patriarchal society is also adding to this matriarchal lineage. Generally,
in a feminist work, I don't know whether you will exactly call this particular work a feminist work, but then normally you come across a kind of an association or a bonding between women. Is there any kind of such bonds established here? Because you will see that each generation seems to be trying to liberate themselves from the previous one. There is no kind of a point of convergence anywhere between the women.
Yes.
Is there?
Actually, when we take the relationship of Kasturi and Virmadi,
Yes.
Virmadi as a child, she is trying to connect to her mother.
Okay.
But her mother is always occupied with the next child.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yes.
this may be the reason why she is resisting. She is trying to connect. Virmadi is trying to connect to her mother. That's when she is feeding the child, the next baby, she is going there and she is trying to peep in. Where Kasturi gets irritated. So Kasturi is asking, why don't you go and feed your siblings? So she says, I'm fed up with this. Why, mother, you're always pregnant and you're always giving birth to children and you're giving the responsibility to me. So at a very young age, she's not getting that motherly care or love, even though she's trying to connect to her mother. And this may be the reason why she is resisting her mother.
Okay. and the very prominent acts of resistance, if you take into account, you spoke about an abortion, right?
Yes,
The
it does. It
deliberate
does abortion.
attempt to, what was the circumstance that made her abort the baby? Was it merely a blatant sort of an act of resistance just to prove it that she is resisting, or there are sufficient reasons or grounds on the basis of which she has undertaken that?
Actually, sufficient reasons are not given here.
Hmm.
It's only said that she is divorced and she's back to her mother's house. And it's just said in one or two lines that she's aborted.
Okay. So one should, I think, gather that it is an attempt by which she is proving that she, I mean, she is trying to destroy the maternal image of herself.
It may be, because that's why, like at the end of the book, the last line of the novel is like this: "This book weaves a connection between my mother and me. Each word a brick in a mansion I made with my head and my heart. Now live in it, Mama, and leave me be. Do not haunt me anymore." So the last line, "Do not haunt me anymore," itself shows that her mother image or the maternal is haunting her. It's haunting Ida. That's why she is trying to write off her mother.
Okay. So will you look at that as an act of violence as well? Images of violence coming from women as acts of resistance.
It can be an act of violence also, or maybe she doesn't want the memory of her mother, because her mother is already dead.
Yes.
And she's gone, so she doesn't want the memory of her mother, maybe. Or I think these two characters, be it Virmadi or be it Ida, they have a fear that in future whether they will become an extension of their mothers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jidamas, there is another question by Anju. Shall I read?
Yeah, sure.
What do you think is the role of memory, especially collective memory here, especially in forging the identities of Virmati and Ida?
Yes, there is a role of memory, and especially collective memory. So you can define this as when we talk about the identities of Virmadi and Ida, as I told you. Virmadi, when she was a daughter, she was always trying to resist and revolt her mother. But when she became a mother, she behaves like a totally different person towards her daughter, Ida. So that memory of the maternal, or an extension of the maternal, can be seen both in Virmadi and in Ida. We don't get to see much of this extension because we don't know much about Ida here. We get to know more about the past of Virmadi than Ida the character. And Ida the character is trying to get rid of the memory of Virmadi, her mother. So there is a role of memory too here.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is by Miss Anita. Her question is, she just wanted to clarify about the scope available for queer community to transcend the taboos, just in case it comes within the purview of your research.
In one of the novels of Manju Kapoor, named A Married Woman, in that also you have the character Asta. That is the name of the character, Asta. She is not a happily married woman, and she gets into a lesbian relationship with another character called Pipiliga, where she finds that uh, it's more easy for her to connect to Pipiliga than with her own husband. So, in that work, a married woman, Manju Kapoor, is bringing in this aspect of cure, and how these characters again trying to transcend or trying to resist and break the sexual taboos.
Okay, ma'am. Any further questions?
Ma'am, this is Deepti. It's just an extension of the thought process that Dr. Suma had put forward. I was just wondering that with all the three daughters uh, who are trying to break several social structural taboos that have been created, whether it is marriage or whether it is the social construct of taking the responsibility of childbearing, child caring, and again, the process continues into feeling the responsibility as parents to get the child, settled through marriage. Uh, the social structure is being repeated over and over again. So as these characters are breaking their taboo, are they in some way creating their own taboos in the form of loneliness, in the form of having to side over to a partner for feeling or for rather, fighting that loneliness again? So when we look at the etymology of the word taboo, it also means setting apart. So when we set apart ourselves, aren't we also creating ourselves and our identities as another taboo, within society? And when we create those taboos, uh, individuality, which is moving against the social structure, leads to loneliness, and that leads to creating a separate social structure, uh, in many terms, leaning over several different taboos that society is going to probably in future accept. It's not a question, it was just a thought process. Uh,
Uh,
in
yes,
due
I
course,
think
aren't we?
Deepti, yes, I agree with you because isolation and loneliness is yet another theme of Manju Kapoor's works. Now, when you
Yes.
look at the female characters, you can see that they feel that internally they are lonely, they are isolated, and this is one reason that they are resisting and they are trying to break all the taboos. Especially Kapoor is writing about the sexual taboos. She's more into the sexual taboos. So, as an answer to this isolation, they are getting into new relationships.
So, ma'am, aren't they again falling back into the social structure? Aren't they always coming back to that element of cyclic, structured relationships, which are actually putting them down again? So, could we actually call them taboo? I'm
Uh,
actually trying to reverse the concept of taboo here because
okay, I understood.
yeah, because ultimately, when we are thinking of the word taboo, which is forbidden, they somehow tend to fall back into that forbidden zones, to find their identity or to find an answer for their loneliness. They're actually not coming out. Even with the character Ida, she comes back, but then she still would love to hang on to the memories of her past. Even though she says, I don't want her, she still goes back to that same place because she doesn't actually want to be part of that lonely world. She is broken away from the families, from the marital cycle. She has aborted the child and so forth. But the explanation why she is aborted is probably one reason because she wanted to fight the taboo of what her grandmother had gone through. but finally she goes back to the memory of her mother the past to which her mother had fought for in the form of taboo, and she still clings on to that, probably trying to move on beyond these spaces of taboos, the cultural taboos that has been set.
I think yes, like the movement. When you look at the movement of these three characters, you can see there is a cycle. Like as you told, Veermadi as a daughter resisting her mother, but when she becomes a mother, uh, at least some of her actions resemble her mother, Kasturi.
Yes, I
Okay.
think that is because ultimately, when you take up that responsibility, you fall back into that patriarchal structural mode of thought process as well as the image of the mother.
Yes.
So,
So
yeah.
what they are trying to do is externally they are trying to resist. So maybe this breaking the taboo, uh, maybe their resistance, their resistance to the society, their resistance to the family, to the territory where they are in.
So, ma'am, what I'm asking is, isn't enough for ultimately falling back into that same territory in some sort as a taboo?
Maybe Deepti,
She has. Yes, ma'am.
Jeetha, would you like me to
Yeah, sure, miss, sure, miss.
take that question a little bit? As far as I understand, Deepti, I would say, I mean, why don't we look at the three women as putting up resistance in different degrees?
Yes.
They are not so much of the. I don't know whether I would call them as um, uh, uh, the attempts of resistance are actually severe acts of retaliation. But then, looking at on the whole, if you look at the three women, either of the three puts in a better fight. She tries to change the milieu a little bit. Okay, the kind of statements at least are acts of resistance when she says that it's almost like a kind of a death wish
Coming
where
out
she
of the
rising from the funeral fire,
fire.
taking
Yes.
inspiration from that. Okay, so there is one can say the intensity of the resistance changes, and probably we can look forward to another generation of where the taboo will definitely be broken or attacked more brutally than Ida. I think it's a kind of an open-ended kind of situation where expectations can be built on favoring
Yes.
the last time.
I felt a problematic, the problematic position was association to memory, and memory again is a collective and a communicative thought process.
Yes,
So when it
yes,
comes
it
to
is.
community and when it
And she's
comes to
not able to.
collectivity, break off
Yes,
completely.
she can't break off. So that haunting presence is there. Probably there will be a moment of some where she summons up greater courage, and she finally
Yes.
manages to break free from the clutches of that destructive or
Yes.
corrosive memory of her mother.
Yes, ma'am.
And
And
then
I
we,
think that, yeah, ma'am, continue.
no, it's okay. So you can carry on.
Yeah, ma'am. What I was saying is actually Manju Kapoor's later novels give an answer to this, where
Yes.
they actually break off from this collective thought process and structural family and move on to the next stage of individuality and having a self identity away from the patriarchal structure,
Yes.
slowly leaning over towards the lesbian thought process.
And
This is her
even
first
further,
novel.
yes.
Yeah, this is a first novel. That's right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
And
that explains.
after reading this novel, like I have thought, if Ida had not aborted, and if Ida had a girl, and if she was going to tell the story, uh, how will she recollect about her mother, Ida, and how
Yeah.
will Ida's daughter maybe resist her
Move
mother?
on one step forward. Yeah.
Okay, so, and
Thank you.
actually they have to free themselves from heterosexuality. I mean, that ultimately would be the answer to patriarchy. And the options of lesbianism, and I think you have even spoken. I don't know whether masturbation is taken up here or in another novel.
In
Uh,
another novel, ma'am. In
in
another
another
novel. Yeah.
So that there again, that is where the actual acts of resistance come in. I mean, whether we can agree, we can accept that or not is an entirely different question. But then that is where you can negate motherhood, or the actual break with maternity, the abjection of the maternal to construct a liberated self will emerge.
Now, when you look at her novels, Manju Kapoor's novels, like you can see a gradual progression. Here, she's talking about the heterosexuality, and in the second novel, a married woman, she moves on to the next level of lesbianism, and the next novels like Home, Custody, The Immigrant, you can see how she is trying to get out of this clutches of patriarchy, where she is discussing all these issues considered as taboos by the society being broken by the characters.
Though, ma'am, it's actually the expression of the taboo, the whole discussion of homosexuality and especially lesbianism, and fighting against the social cultural structures. Taslima Nasreen actually puts in a lot of these points across her novels. So it just crossed my mind, so I thought of sharing it. Though she doesn't create a fictionalized version of the entire, it has the ideological reasons that are put in Taslima Nasreen's texts are different. Yet all these 3 points of going against the taboo are very explicitly discussed in her work. So I just want to mention that.
Thank you, Deepthi, for the information.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Deepthi. Thank you, Suma ma'am. Thank you, Jeetha ma'am. Any further questions or discussion here?
I would just like to put in one word that is,
Yes.
it is not for us to completely state an answer here, because all these are problems in the problematics of gender, which is part of human relationships as human bodies, male and female bodies, and all the other types of bodies in the gender spectrum. So finding answers is not easy, at least from our domain of literature, and we can only make suggestions, and at the same time we can also remember that the critique of culture is never that very easy, and what is needed is a sort of a persistent awareness and vigilance against suppressions rather than finding out a universal answer that might apply to anyone. Okay, I just wanted to intervene this much. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy ma'am. Uh, any further questions? Any other queries? Okay, so uh, Dr. Suma ma'am. Suma ma'am, do you have any concluding remarks on this session?
Oh yes, maybe I would like to just say that this is a very interesting, I should say, a very fertile sort of domain that Mrs. Jeetha Johny has taken up for her research, and she has been proceeding in a very with all her interest and concern, and it's very comprehensive sort of a study, and she's also delved deep into some of the issues, especially that of abjection. And this particular session has also proved very fruitful, for me and for all the research scholars and everybody gathered here. And I think there are some very pertinent questions raised here. There is enough scope for deliberation. And I'm sure Jeetha, Johny will incorporate whatever has been discussed here, or if there is anything some valuable in the discussion that has emerged here into her thesis. And wishing her all the very best. And she would come up with a wonderful thesis in future. And wishing Chrysalis all the very best in their future endeavors, and congratulating Betsy ma'am for the fine venture that she's initiated with the control. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to chair this wonderful session and being a part of the SATS. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Suma ma'am, for your wishes.
You're welcome.
Betsy ma'am, would you like to make some remarks?
No, just a word of thanks, especially to the chairperson. She has been so kind to accept our invitation and to be here and to put in all these insightful comments. And definitely a great thanks and a word of deep felt happiness for my scholar Miss Jeetha Johny, who is also my close friend, and to Meera, to Suti, to all the organizers, and to Atulya and everyone around here, and all the participants. Thanks a lot, and wish you a very good night. And let us again meet after 2 weeks. Again, have engaging discussions, and let us talk about these things so that we will know how to think about these things first, and then to find out answers, at least in our own ways, in our own particular localities and in our own particular context. So thanks a lot. This is what I want to say. And I hope that this will continue like this. We should have more and more discussions, and it should be as informal as possible too.
Thank you, everyone.
Hope to see Suma miss again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeetha. It's such a pleasure listening to you.
As part of invited lecture, Betsy ma'am.
Yes, definitely. We would
We
love
should
to
continue
have.
the discussion, and I'm so happy with
We
the
actually honored.
Oh yes, me too. It's such a pleasure having you all. And ma'am, that's a wonderful work that you will be taking up. And I wish all the very best to you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. So,
Bye.
thank you, everyone, and have a very good night. Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night, all.